Hi guys, the American people are being told by Trump and his administration a number of different things regarding tariffs. That other countries pay them, that they will result in a resurgence of US manufacturing, and that they will be used to level the playing field when it comes to trade deficits. Sometimes a good analogy is what's needed to cut through the rhetoric and explain in simple terms what's going on. Here Justin Wolfers, a professor of public policy and economics at the University of Michigan, gave a perfect analogy of how dumb tariffs can be as a tool to achieve Trump's goal. Have a listen.
Look, there's two things that tariffs do. The higher tariffs are, the less we trade with others. That, of course, means that, the car you wanted to buy, you make do with something else. And then the higher tariffs get, the more you end up making do with worse and worse substitutes. The net result of that is a pretty basic economic idea, which is small tariffs aren't much of a problem, but big tariffs can cause enormous pain. And if you simply work through the math of this, it turns out that this set of tariffs will be 50 times more painful than the last set. And that's because this time it's much, much higher tariffs, and it applies to every country and every good. Every part of your life is about to change.
And Justin, when the president says, and his economic advisors speaking on his behalf also say, we simply want countries that trade with us to buy as much of our goods as we buy of theirs. Is that practical?
No. Look, it's about as practical as me saying that I wish that Trader Joe's would buy as much of my stuff as I buy of theirs. I go to the grocery store, I spend a lot of money there. I do so willingly because I can use what I get for that money, food, to feed and nourish my family. But Trader Joe's and I don't have balanced trade the same way China and the United States don't have balanced trade. I turn up to Trader Joe's, I offer to sell them economics lectures, but it turns out they don't want to buy what it is I'm selling. Now, it doesn't create any economic problems because the University of Michigan is willing to buy what I'm selling. So overall, Justin Wolfers Inc. is doing just fine. And the same logic goes for the United States. Overall, the US gets a pretty good deal out of international trade. We buy some stuff, we sell some stuff, and all of our lives are enriched because we get plugged into the enormous variety of wonderful products that people all around the world make for us and with us.
There you have it. Okay. So, what Trump is trying to do is he's trying to paint a picture of, well, look, it's like going to the supermarket and you're buying stuff from the supermarket, but the supermarket is not buying anything from you. And that needs to change. I've mentioned before, there's a lot of products that are in demand in Europe from the United States, but there's a lot of products that are not in demand. So even if you were to reduce tariffs to zero, there isn't the demand for those products. So what Trump is trying to do is he's trying to balance trade when there's no demand for certain products in China or in Europe or other parts of the world. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense, which begs the question, is Donald Trump dumb, or is he just surrounded by people who are dumb, who are telling him, yes, you're doing the right thing? Are they afraid to criticize him? Or do they actually believe what he's doing is right? None of this makes any sense. Now, when it comes to the tariffs being imposed upon China, this is going to drive up the cost of living for ordinary people in the US because, once again, they're the people paying the tariff. And we have to ask this question, does Donald Trump know? Does he know that it's US consumers that will end up paying the tariff? The company importing it will pay the tariff, but this cost will be passed on to the consumer. Does he know this? Do the people around him know this? Because if they don't, that's a serious problem. Now, if it's a finished product, that's pretty clear to see. But what if it's a component? For example, in a car, cars are complex machines, many different components in those machines. Now, if US manufacturing can't pick up the slack, then it makes sense to import these from abroad, mainly China. Because if you try and, as the professor pointed out here, avoid the Chinese product and say, let's look for an American product, then you might not get the same standard. You might not get the same quality. So then the product at the end that you're trying to sell may have more problems, and that's going to damage your trade because people will not buy those products because they're of a lower quality. These supply chains are extremely complex and they need to be protected. Companies spend huge amounts of money researching the best products, best components for their vehicles or whatever they're selling. And Trump is trying to destroy that. These analogies are necessary because it has to be sent to the public. This is what the situation is. This is what Trump is trying to do. This is insane. It makes no sense. Most people, I think, get this. But unfortunately, those who need it most, the Trump supporters, still have their heads in the sand.